My name is Audrey, and I am 37 years old. I live in Denver with my 7-year-old son Milo. Life has been a whirlwind of ups and downs, but today I want to share the story of how everything changed the moment I thought I had found my perfect partner. 2 years ago, I attended a business conference about green initiatives. It was an exciting opportunity to network, learn new strategies for my job as a marketing manager, and meet people who shared my passions. I had no idea that this event would alter the course of my life in ways I could never have imagined. At the conference, I met Gavin. He was a successful lawyer, tall, with dark hair, and a smile that lit up the room. Though he was 10 years older than me, age seemed irrelevant as we struck up an engaging conversation. He was sharp, warm, and genuine, and I found myself drawn to his thoughtful nature. I remember thinking how rare it was to meet someone who not only listened but truly cared about my thoughts. After the conference, we stayed in touch, and soon our connection deepened into a relationship. It felt effortless, and I began to believe I had finally found someone who truly understood me. Gavin got along wonderfully with Milo, who quickly warmed to him. The two of them spent hours playing games, and I couldn't help but smile as I watched them bond. It was everything I had hoped for, a family, a real family. Within a year, we decided to marry. Gavin moved in with us, and while everything seemed perfect, he helped around the house, often picking Milo up from school when I had to stay late at work. "I am getting the hang of this parenting thing," he would say with that grin of his, and I would laugh, feeling grateful for his support. But as time passed, I began to notice subtle changes both in Gavin and in Milo. My once cheerful and talkative son started to withdraw. He became quiet, distant, and began avoiding eye contact when I tried to ask if something was troubling him. At school with his friends, he would simply shrug and say, "I am just tired, Mom." As a mother, those words never sat well with me. I could sense that something was off. The unease grew when I noticed a large bruise on Milo's arm one afternoon. "What happened here, buddy?" I asked, my heart racing. He brushed it off, claiming it was from a fall at the playground, but my instincts told me otherwise. I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that this bruise was just the beginning. That night, as I tucked him into bed, I tried to lift his spirits with a joke. "Hey, planning a trip to the moon, space cadet?" I teased, hoping to coax a smile, but he didn't respond. He simply whispered, "No, Mom," his voice flat, and the silence in the room was deafening. I kissed his forehead and left, but sleep eluded me. I couldn't stop thinking about the bruise, his strange behavior, and Gavin's own shifting demeanor. He had started coming home later, lost in thought, and his once warm and caring attitude had turned tense and irritable. The next day, everything came to a head. My suspicions were confirmed when I discovered the horrifying truth. Gavin had been abusing my son. I found him trembling, his eyes wide with fear, saying nothing. In a frantic attempt to uncover what was happening, I secretly activated a hidden camera. What I saw left me stunned. My husband's actions were captured on tape. I immediately called the police, but just as they were about to arrive, something happened that left everyone in shock and disbelief. The terrifying moment when I realized the extent of what was happening changed everything. I had to act fast to protect Milo, but I never could have prepared myself for what came next. I had to find out what was going on. After a restless night, I decided to take action. I needed to know the truth. I remembered reading about hidden cameras, how they could provide evidence in situations like these. That idea lodged itself in my mind, and I began to formulate a plan. The next day, I purchased a small, discreet camera and carefully installed it in Milo's room, making sure it was well hidden but positioned to capture everything. I hoped it wouldn't come to this, but the thought of Milo being hurt filled me with dread if here is something going.
And I'll find out, I told myself.
Determination rising within me. A few days later, I reviewed the footage. My heart raced as I clicked through the videos, praying for a glimpse of normally. But my worst fears came true. There it was, Gavin losing his temper, yelling at Milo. I watched in horror as he struck my little boy, the sound echoing in the silence of the room. This was not the man I had married. This was a stranger. As the reality of the situation sank in, I felt the ground beneath me crumble. How could he do this? My heart ached for Milo, who had once filled our home with laughter. I wanted to confront Gavin right then and there, but I knew I had to gather more evidence first. I couldn't act impulsively. I needed to be smart about this. The next day, I reached out to Harper, Gavin's 21-year-old daughter. I hoped she could provide insight into her father's behavior. We met at a local cafe, and as I sat across from her, I felt a mixture of anxiety and hope. Harper, I need to talk to you about your dad, I began, my voice trembling. She looked at me, concern etched on her face. What about him? I hesitated, unsure of how to frame my words. I think something's wrong. Milo is acting differently, and I am worried. Harper shifted in her seat, her eyes downcast. I haven't had the best relationship with him. He wasn't always the best father. Her words sent a chill down my spine. What do you mean? I pressed. She took a deep breath, and as she spoke, the truth unfolded. Gavin had been abusive toward Harper when she was younger, a fact she had tried to bury deep inside. It was why she had distanced herself from him over the years. My heart sank further as I realized this man I had married had a history of violence. I knew then that I couldn't handle this alone. I needed a plan. Harper, would you be willing to help me? I asked, urgency in my voice. I'll do whatever it takes to stop him, she replied, determination shining in her eyes. We began to devise a plan to gather more evidence against Gavin, knowing that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges and uncertainty. Little did I know this was just the beginning of a journey that would test my strength as a mother and lead me down a path I never expected to take. After my shocking conversation with Harper, I felt a mix of fear and determination bubbling inside me. I had uncovered a hidden truth about Gavin, and I knew I had to act swiftly. If he had hurt Harper, then there was no telling how far he might go with Milo. I needed to gather more evidence to protect my son, but I had to be careful. The last thing I wanted was to tip Gavin off and put Milo in more danger. Harper and I agreed that she would arrange a meeting with Gavin. She had a way of getting under his skin, and I hoped she could provoke him enough to elicit a confession. The thought of her confronting him made my stomach churn, but I knew it was necessary. We decided to meet at the cafe again to finalize our plan. Are you absolutely sure you want to go through with this? I asked Harper as we sat at our usual table, the soft warmth of the afternoon sun streaming through the windows. Harper nodded, her face resolute. I have to. It's time I faced him. No one should have to endure what we did. I admired her courage, but a deep sense of fear for Milo's safety gnawed at me. Please be careful. We need to make sure you stay safe, I urged. I will. I'll record the conversation on my phone, she reassured me. He won't see it coming. As the days passed, I kept a watchful eye on Milo, my every instinct on high alert. He seemed to sense my anxiety, frequently asking if everything was all right. I would smile and reassure him, but inside I was a bundle of nerves. The thought of what Gavin might do if he picked up on the tension in our home haunted me. Finally, the day of the confrontation arrived. Just before leaving to meet Gavin, Harper texted me, "I am on my way. Wish me luck, stay safe," I replied, my heart racing as I paced around the living room. Nothing could distract me from the fear building inside. Time seemed to drag on, each minute stretching longer than the last. My mind replayed every possible outcome, What if Gavin got angry? What if he became violent an hour later? A text from Harper finally arrived. I got him to talk. I am coming over now. My heart pounded in my chest as I waited for her. When she walked through the door, she looked rattled but determined. I've got it, she said, pulling her phone out. He admitted it. Relief flooded me, but it was swiftly replaced by a new wave of dread. What did he say? I asked, my voice shaky. Harper hit play on the recording, and Gavin's voice filled the room. You were too weak, Harper. I had to teach you discipline, and Milo, he needs to learn respect. Sometimes tough love is the only way. Those words sent a chill down my spine. How had I allowed this man into our lives? I shook my head in disbelief. We have to take this to the police, I said, my voice steady despite the fear.
I
agree, but we need more than just one recording. It might not be enough, Harper said, her eyes all light with determination. I nodded, realizing she was right. I'll set up another camera in Milo's room and keep a close eye on things. We need more evidence. That night, as I tucked Milo into bed, I couldn't shake the unease gnawing at me. Do you feel safe, buddy? I asked, brushing his hair back gently. He looked up at me with those big brown eyes full of innocence. Of course, Mom, why wouldn't I? He answered, and I forced a smile, hiding the storm of worry inside. I kissed his forehead and left the room, my heart heavy with the knowledge of what was unfolding under our roof. Over the next few days, I kept the camera rolling, reviewing the footage each day. My stomach churned with each new video, hoping for a glimpse of normalcy, but instead I found more evidence of Gavin's explosive rage. He would come home late, already in a foul mood, and I would hear him shouting at Milo for the smallest of reasons, leaving toys on the floor or forgetting to turn off the bathroom light. I was horrified. How could he treat my sweet boy this way? I whispered to myself as I rewatched the recordings, trying to make sense of it. One evening, after yet another episode of Gavin's fury, I knew I couldn't let it continue. We need to talk, I said firmly, my heart racing. Gavin looked up from his paper, confusion crossing his face. About what? He asked. About how you are treating Milo. Hek, just a child, I said, trying to control my voice. His expression immediately turned cold. You are overreacting, Audrey. Kids need discipline. They have to understand the consequences of their actions. No, this isn't discipline, it's abuse. I shot back, feeling the heat rise in my chest. He stood up, towering over me. You don't know what you are talking about. I am doing what's best for him. The argument escalated, and I could feel the air between us crackle with tension. I had to stay strong for Milo. I won't let you hurt him anymore. I'll go to the police if I have to. Gavin's eyes darkened, and I saw a flicker of something dangerous there. You really think that will end well for you? He warned, his voice low and menacing. I stepped back, suddenly afraid. I'll protect my son, I declared, though doubt crept into my mind. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about what I had said. I was determined to protect Milo, no matter the cost. The camera kept rolling, and I would do whatever it took to ensure my son's safety. The tension in our home was palpable, and I knew I was on a collision course with the man I had once loved. As the night wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling that the storm was only just beginning. The days following my confrontation with Gavin were filled with a heavy tension that seemed to suffocate our home. I kept the camera rolling, hoping to catch something, anything that would prove his abusive behavior. Each time I checked the footage, dread clawed at my insides. The man I once thought I knew had become a stranger, someone I feared might truly harm my child. Milo remained blissfully unaware of the storm brewing around us. He continued to be his sweet, curious self, asking questions about the world and drawing pictures of superheroes. I admired his resilience, but I could see glimpses of unease in his eyes when Gavin was around. It broke my heart one evening as I Prepared dinner. I heard the front door slam. My heart raced. Gavin was home early. I quickly glanced at the camera feed on my phone, seeing him storm into the living room. The tension was palpable, and I knew something was about to happen. Milo, playing with his toys on the floor, looked up at Gavin, his face lighting up. For a brief moment, "Dad, look at what
I
made," he said, holding up a crumpled paper rocket instead of encouragement. Gavin's face twisted in annoyance. "What is that mess? Don't you know how to clean up after yourself?" he snapped, his voice sharp. I felt a surge of anger. How could he talk to Milo that way? I wanted to rush in, but I knew I needed to gather more evidence, so I stood frozen in the kitchen, watching the scene unfold. Through the camera, Milo's smile faded, and he dropped the rocket. "I am sorry, Dad. I was just trying to have fun," he said quietly. Gavin's eyes darkened. "Fun? You think this is fun? You need to learn some respect," he shouted, his face red with rage. In that moment, I couldn't take any more. I stormed into the living room, adrenaline surging through my veins. "Gavin, stop! Hune's just a child," I shouted, my voice rising above his. He turned to me, surprise flickering across his face before morphing into anger. "Stay out of this, Audrey. You have no idea what you were talking about. Enough. You need to treat him with love, not anger," I pleaded, stepping between. "Gavin and Milo love this kid, needs discipline. You are making him weak," he spat back, his fists clenched at his sides. I stood my ground, refusing to back down. "No, Gavin, you are the one who's weak. Hitting a child is not discipline, it's abuse." At that moment, the room was charged with tension, and I felt a sense of clarity wash over me. I couldn't let him continue this way. "I am taking this to the police," I declared, my voice steady despite the fear coursing through me. Gavin's laugh
was cold and bitter, a sound that sent a
chill through my bones. "You really think this will end well for you? You'll regret this, Audrey," he sneered. My heart raced as the weight of his words sank, and I realized just how dangerous this situation had become, not just for me, but for Milo. "I am protecting my son, Gavin. That's all that matters," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He stepped closer, his eyes narrowing, his presence almost suffocating. "You regret this decision. You think you are the victim here. You don't know what you are asking for." In that moment, Milo, sensing the tension in the room, tugged at my shirt. "Mom, I am scared," he whispered, his voice trembling with fear. I immediately knelt down and pulled him into a hug. "It's okay, sweetheart, you are safe," I reassured him, though my own fear gripped me. I could feel the walls closing in around us, and I knew I had to act fast. That night, I couldn't sleep. Gavin's threats echoed in my mind, replaying over and over again, but I knew I couldn't let fear control me. I had to protect Milo, no matter the cost. The next morning, I made up my mind. I would gather all the evidence, the recordings, everything I had, and go to the police. I couldn't let Gavin's cruelty go unchallenged any longer. When Milo woke up, I hugged him tightly, trying to calm the storm of emotions swirling inside me. "I love you, buddy. Remember that no matter what happens," I whispered, kissing the top of his head as I prepared to confront the authorities. I felt a mix of dread and hope. This was the moment I had been dreading, yet it was also the moment I had been waiting for. Would they believe me? Would they act quickly enough to protect Milo? My heart hammered in my chest, but I knew I had to do this. With the recordings clenched in my hands, I steeled myself. I was ready to face the truth and fight for my son, no matter what it took. The day I decided to go to the police felt like stepping into a storm. My heart raced as I held the recordings close, each one a painful reminder of the torment Gavin had put Milo through. Taking a deep breath, I reminded myself of why I was doing this: to protect my son, to ensure he was safe. Milo needed me to be strong, and I wouldn't let him down. I couldn't. As I drove to the police station, the streets of Denver felt unfamiliar, almost surreal. I could hardly concentrate on the road. my mind swirling with doubt and fear. What if they didn't believe me? What if Gavin found out? But I pushed those thoughts aside. I had to focus on Milo. I had to do this for him. When I arrived, I parked the car and sat for a moment, staring at the building. The reality of my situation sank, and I was about to report my husband for child abuse. I felt like I was stepping into a new world, one filled with uncertainty, but also with hope. Taking a deep breath, I entered the police station, my heart racing. I approached the front desk, trying to project confidence even as my hands trembled. I need to report child abuse, I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. The officer looked up, concern evident on his face. Of course, ma'am, let me take you to an interview room. He led me down a corridor, and as I walked, I felt the weight of my decision pressing down on me. This was at the moment I had been waiting for, yet it felt monumental. In the interview room, I sat across from Detective Officer Ramirez. She had a calm, reassuring presence which eased my nerves just a little. Can you tell me what's been happening? She asked, her voice soft but firm. I took a deep breath and began to share everything: the bruises on Milo's arms, the recordings of Gavin's explosive outbursts, and Harper's revelations about her own history with him. As I spoke, the weight of fear slowly lifted, replaced by a sense of power.
I
have recordings, I said, my voice growing stronger. I filmed him losing his temper, hitting my son. Officer Ramirez nodded, her expression turning serious. We need to see those recordings, Audrey. They could be critical evidence. My hands shook as I handed over my phone. She reviewed the footage, and as I watched her face, first disbelief, then anger, and finally determination, I felt a deep sense of relief. This is very serious, she said, her voice steady. We going to take this seriously. Hours seemed to stretch on as I left the police station, my heart pounding. I had done it. I had taken the first step to
protect
Milo. Now all I could do was wait and hope. The days that followed were a blur of emotions: interviews with Milo, the police gathering evidence, and Gavin completely unaware of what was unfolding. In a strange way, I felt some peace, knowing he was still in the dark. Then came the day I both feared and anticipated. Gavin was called in for
questioning. I stood at a distance, my
stomach in knots. Would he try to twist the situation? Would he lie his way out of this? When the police finally summoned me to hear their findings, I held my breath. We've gathered enough evidence to charge him with child abuse, Officer Ramirez said, her voice serious but reassuring. Will be FES soon. Relief washed over me like a tidal wave. The truth had been exposed, and Gavin would finally face the consequences. As the legal proceedings moved forward, I remained strong. Harper testified about her own experiences with Gavin, adding weight to the case. I spoke passionately about the recordings, recounting the fear I had felt for Milo's safety. Then came the day of the verdict in the courtroom. My heart raced as the judge announced, we find the defendant Gavin guilty of child abuse. Tears welled up in my eyes. After all the struggle, the fight for my son, justice had finally been served. Gavin was sentenced to prison, and as he was led away, a mixture of emotions overwhelmed me: relief, sorrow, and an undeniable sense of newfound strength. With Gavin gone, Milo and I began to rebuild our lives. We moved into a new apartment, cozy and free from the shadows of the past. Slowly, Milo found his laughter again. He made new friends, rediscovered his joy, and poured his heart into his art, creating bright, colorful drawings of superheroes and adventure. Harper also became an important part of our lives, visiting often together. We helped each other heal from the pain we had endured. Looking back on our journey, I realized how powerful love truly is. My love for Milo had driven me to face the darkness, uncover the truth, and fight for justice. Together we emerged stronger, ready to embrace whatever came next. Watching Milo play on a sunny afternoon. I couldn't help but smile knowing we were free, and I would always protect him no matter what. We were finally free, and the future ahead looked bright with possibilities.